Welcome to my channel. This is Hot Mess and Hot Glue. My name is Lynn. Today we have some spider decor. Tons of fun. Most of it is extremely easy and most of it is also from the Dollar Tree. So using this spider bowl that I got from the Dollar Tree, I actually had this from last year. I know for a fact though that they have this out again this year. What I'm doing is I've marked where I want to cut a hole in the center of the bowl. I thought maybe my little regular wire clippers would work. However, the portion that I'm cutting, it's just a little too thick. And so I needed to take out my tin snips. Now I use these quite often and I will make sure that they are linked down below in my description box in case you are interested in them or would like to know how to get them easy. You just go to that, click on the link and it'll take you right to it. Now, Dollar Tree had these cute little hanging lamps, and when they had them, I bought several for my girls and then they kind of just outgrew them. So what I did was I painted the surrounding portion of it black. It used to be gold, but I wanted it black so that it would sit and fit inside of this bowl to create kind of like a hanging pendant lamp. Using some of my hot glue, I'm just going to attach the thicker portions and then kind of just go all the way around, make sure that anywhere that it connects, that it's got a nice definite kind of seal to it. I don't want it to rock too much. So when I pick the little light up by its hanging mechanism, the little hook there, I want to make sure that the bowl itself is very sturdy. And it actually really was. The entire thing is extremely light, so I knew it wasn't going to take much. Now, in a previous DIY, I have used a little like fence stake decor, and I took the chain from that and I used it in this portion here just to give it a little bit of kind of visual effect. Now you could use a regular chain maybe from the garden section if you have any left over from spring and summertime. I knew that the plastic was going to be enough because this is extremely lightweight and I liked the thickness of it. I just liked everything about it. So I chose to go with this plastic one as opposed to doing an actual chain. Now, after I got the chain on, I painted the hot glue so that it wasn't as obvious on there. It was clear when it dried. However, you can still kind of see it. So taking some of these cobwebs that I got from the Dollar Tree, I'm just going to take 2 of their spiders. Now, I didn't realize this, but the spiders are actually 2 completely different little styles, and I thought that was kind of cool. So I'm going to snip the ring portion off of these that typically hold these spiders to the spider webs, and I'm going to take some really thin monofilament line. It's like fishing wire, and I'm going to tie the fishing line to the spiders, and then I'm going to tie the spider to the lamp itself so that it has the effect of spiders hanging from this cute little pendant. I sped this up for you because it was kind of obnoxious trying to see the string itself and then trying to manipulate it to make a bow and to tie a knot, and it was just a mess. I struggled with this far more than I really wanted to admit, but I wanted to at least show you how I did it. And like you saw, I just kind of took the filament, I wrapped it towards the middle of the spider, and then I made a nice tight bow and I clipped off the rest of it. Now, I thought for sure tying the little spider onto the basket would be a little bit easier, or a lot easier, but it was not a lot easier. It was only a little bit easier. And I think it was just me being tired. It was kind of late at night when I was making this, and my eyes get tired. And so, like I said, I had a really hard time seeing this little fishing line as I was trying to tie it on. But once I got it, you can see here the effect that it has of these little dangling spiders. And that's it. That is all there is to this little thing. I mean, I just think it's adorable. Here it is at night. It's got a really cool glow to it, but then it also casts a really neat shadow on the wall. This next project here is going to be this trick or treat sign. Now these are items that I got at Target's Dollar Spot. The sign itself was $3, and then the stencil that I'm using is coming from one of these packs that Target was selling. You get like a reversible chalkboard, and in this particular one I wanted the trick or treat sign. I did something else with the other portion of it, but I saved this and I liked it because there was that spider on it, and I kind of wanted to focus on spider theme for this video. I'm just going to outline and trace the stencil. As you can see now, anytime I do a stencil, what I like to do is I go through and I kind of close the gaps and pencil them in so that it's not as obvious that I used a stencil. And so you can see here when I take the A, instead of keeping that space open, I just go through and I connect all the spaces. So I do that to the anything that has, you know, the R's, the O's, and A's. And so I just go in and I close up those letters, and that gives it a little bit more of like a handwritten as opposed to stenciled look. Using my paint markers, I did the webbing, I did the spider itself because it was a little too small to get in with my paintbrush, and then I went through and I outlined the lettering, as you can see, with the paint marker, but I did go back through with just my regular paint. I'm using black chalkboard paint by Folk Art and a semi-small brush, and I go in and I just color in those words and fill them in completely. And it's, again, it's as simple as that. A little bit of stencil work, a little bit of painting, and that's all. I mean, what I love about this too is, you know, the stencil portion that came with like 4 stencils plus a board, and it was only $3. It's just, it's very, very cost effective, and it turned out so cute. So for this next one, I'm taking another Dollar Tree sign. I'm sorry, this was not Dollar Tree, this was Target Dollar Spot. So this came with that little truck, and I used that truck in a previous video, and I was going to use the truck with this sign, and so I just did an outer layer of paint for this frame just to kind of separate the 2 layers, and all I used was 1 coat of the chalkboard paint by Folk Art, and then I gave it a light sanding once it was dry. Now I've used this spider portion. This is, I believe, the 3rd time I've used this, and there's that chain in that picture in the upper right hand corner that I used for the spider lamp or pendant. Now I'm taking my heat gun and I'm warming the tip of my X-Acto knife, and when I do that, it gets nice and hot, and so it just kind of cuts right through this plastic. It's not a very thick plastic, but it is way too thick for my scissors. And the tin snips are very big and bulky, and they weren't going to get around those details of kind of like the fangs of the spider, and I did not want to lose that detail. So giving it a complete coat of, again, the chalkboard paint by Folk Art while it's driving, it does not drive. It only dries, but while it's drying, I'm taking some of the rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree, and I placed a bunch of spiders just all over the place. And I will say that one in the upper right hand corner truly creeps me out. Everything about it, it's just so eerie, and I hated it when I had them separated and they were just sitting on my workstation. Several times I would like look down and jump because I would realize for a split second it was like there was a huge spider. And here in Colorado we get these gigantic hobo spiders, oh my god, and they're bigger than that. And so I was terrified every single time. And so this picture, I love it, but it kind of genuinely gives me a little bit of the creeps, but I still think it's fun. Those additional spiders are just from Dollar Tree sticker packs. I just found those and I added them. Here we go with another, this one's actually from Dollar Tree this time, and there's this adorable little spider with kind of this wonky spider web. I'm taking the wire snips because again, I can go into the smaller spaces with it a little bit better because I didn't want the feet to hang out. I wanted to keep as much of the shape of the spider web as possible. And to help me get this three-dimensional portion, the spider's body off of here, I'm using my heat gun again. And this will warm the glue that is attaching this to the back portion of the board. So when I take my little spatula, this comes off just so much easier and it does a lot less damage. Now, typically, I would actually try to remove this paper or sand down. This was covered in glitter. I did not want to go out to the shed and bring out my sander, so I just completely flipped this over and did it the easy way. This scrapbook paper I'm using came from a large all-season holiday pack that I got at Hobby Lobby when it was on sale for 50% off. So obviously with all those spiders, I thought it would be fun to use it in here. So I'm just going to quite simply trace it, cut it, and then attach it using a glue stick and kind of spread the glue out to make sure that there's no extra bubbles. I want to recreate the web that it had on it. Now it's going to be a little bit harder to see because of the busy background of that scrapbook paper, but I actually enjoyed that portion of it. I didn't want it to be too in my face, So just using a marker, I go through and I went over it the first time with kind of a light hand, and then I went back through and I darkened some of the lines and kind of made them just a little bit more noticeable. Now this spider here comes from a garland that Dollar Tree sells. It's a bright orange garland and it's got these gigantic spiders on it. And so giving it one good coat of chalkboard paint by Folk Art just to give it a completely matte finish so that I can go back over it with a little bit of white paint to kind of bring out some of the texture. And attaching this guy was a little bit tricky. So I put a tumbling tower block inside the body of him. Now there was still a fair amount of gap in between where the block was and where it actually met the spider's form. So I used a boatload of hot glue in between here, and then once it was all dry, I go through and I actually paint portions of the block. Now I had some leftover chain and I thought that would be really cool to kind of use it again to create kind of a cohesive decor, and I'm just going to simply use my staple gun and attach this. Now I just was not thinking, and the staples absolutely did poke through to the other side of this. So I do not recommend using a staple gun for this one. What I did to fix it is I took my little wire cutters and I just kind of I flipped the sign over and I just trimmed as much that was poking through as possible. Now, even though I did that, there was still a little bit that I couldn't grab. So I grabbed 2 of these little half round beads and using a little bit of glue stick glue, I just stuck it onto this little coffee stir, gave them one coat of paint, and then I used those to kind of cover where those staples were kind of protruding on the other side, just to make sure that no one would get scratched or cut or anything, because that would definitely not be so much fun. And I really liked this addition, and I probably would not have thought to do that had the staples not gone through, but I really liked the aesthetics of it, and so it was one of those things you call a happy accident. So to me, I was happy with it. It was totally fine. So when I'm painting this, I do not want to paint where I'm going to put the hot glue to attach it to the board, because unpainted surfaces will have a better adhesion to the surface that you want to connect it to. So try not to paint that portion if you can. Sometimes plans change and you didn't mean to do something and you end up having to use hot glue and it'll still work, but sometimes if that's the case, you might want to add a little bit of wood glue also. So this is when I kind of noticed that the body of it was just a little flat. I mean, obviously I painted it in, a flat black. However, I just wanted to bring out some of its detail and some of its character. So using just a Dollar Tree brush, I'm just lightly dusting a very, very small amount of white paint over it. And here it is. On this next project, we're going to take a house that came in a pack from Target. It was like $5, I think, for a pack of 3. And I wanted to kind of recreate a little bit of an arachnophobia house feeling. If you've seen that movie, let me know. I mean, that movie to this day still is so traumatizing, but I love it. And I watch it at least twice a year. And just recently, it was a couple years ago, or maybe it was last year, I had my daughter watch it with me, and she was like, I can see why this is absolutely traumatizing and terrifying. I said, yeah, but I have to watch it. I can't help it. So giving it one good coat of white paint, I'm just using Waverly chalk paint. And once that's completely dried, I am not an artist. I do not draw. And even the most simple circle with 8 lines can be difficult. And I struggled. And I've got some wonky looking spiders on here. But again, my idea was to kind of recreate that arachnophobia feel where there's just spiders kind of oozing from the house. And so I just wanted to cover the house, but not too much. I mean, once I realized how terrible I was at drawing a tiny spider, I decided to scale back severely on just how many spiders we were going to put on the front of this house. So it turned out pretty cute in the end. However, I can't believe how difficult it was for me to draw teeny tiny little spiders. I'm using these really fine tipped art pens too to kind of help. No, not so much. I mean, look at those guys. They look more like ants. They don't really look like spiders. Throwing it in this little metal house that I got from a thrift store for $1 and just wrapping some webs around it, I thought just kind of finished off its overall look. Now, I saw this container at Walmart for $1, and I thought it would be fun to make kind of a lightweight, like raised tray a little bit. Now, I'm not going to put anything too heavy on it, but I did want to reinforce that bucket somewhat because it is awfully flimsy. So just taking some jumbo popsicle sticks, I kind of measured them, saw where I needed to cut a little bit off of both ends so that the rounded portions were removed. And all I did was take a little bit of hot glue and I just kind of laid them in there just to act as a little bit of support. And it actually made a huge difference. I was pretty surprised with how stable this thing was once I added all of these. Now, I did go all the way around the inside of the bucket. So I used quite a few popsicle sticks, but it wasn't terrible. I don't think I would have done anything different. If you could think of a better way that I could have reinforced the inside of this bucket, please let me know, because it was a fair amount of not glue sticks, popsicle sticks in order to reinforce this. But in the end, I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think it's going to be really fun just to kind of have in the background on a shelf in the kitchen or on a cabinet shelf or just wherever. I just think it's going to make a really nice little addition to decor, and to be able to put something a little bit taller on it, like some of the pumpkins that I made in my last video, I think would go really cute on this. To use, or not to use, but to make the top portion of the tray, I'm using this, I believe it was a chalkboard. It was on clearance at Hobby Lobby and it was $1.24 when I purchased it. So it still seemed rather affordable. Holy moly, I can't talk. Affordable. Rather affordable, and kept the overall project very cost effective. I painted the entire thing front and back with 3 coats of the chalkboard paint. Now, I did 3 coats because the back portion soaked up a ton of the paint, and on this front portion, the gold was really difficult to cover. And to add a little bit of embellishments on the bottom, it just seemed a little plain. So I grabbed this ribbon that I had from the Dollar Tree, and I was wishing it was in a little bit bright. The orange was a little bit more bright and vibrant, but it was the only thing I had. But I did not want the gold kind of outline on the ribbon to show. So I just flipped the ribbon over, and it's very iridescent, and so you can see through it. So I just took the entire roll of ribbon and I wrapped it around and around and around until I ran out of ribbon. And then by painting the rim of this with one coat of black paint, it did just kind of add a little bit of what was missing. Now, I did show a picture of some embellishment stickers that I found. I had these sitting around in my stash and I thought I would add these on just for a little bit of additional personality, but for the most part, the bottom portion of this likely won't be seen because it's a tall riser. I plan to use it behind smaller objects that I'm trying to show. The next project, I found this really cool basket and I just knew I wanted to use it for something, and I knew I wanted to use this gigantic spider web. However, I do not love the tinsel that it comes with. At Christmas time, there's always a ton of tinsel. And so what I usually do is when I cut it off, I just set it aside and I save the larger strips, because when the kids get their Christmas trees from the Dollar Tree, they use it to like fill in how blank they are. So once I got all of that removed, now I'm just going through with my wire cutters and removing the nubs that was holding all of that delicious, beautiful tinsel on there. The basket itself was just, there was nothing wrong with it. It's just, I thought it would look better if I added a whitewash to it because of the spider web being so bold and dark, that I thought it would just kind of add a decent little contrast to it. So I covered the entire basket, the sides, the inside, the back portion of it, all of it's completely covered. It did mute the wood just enough, and I was really happy that that's how I went about it. Then after looking at it, I decided, well, aren't webs typically white? So I kind of went through, I just added a very light dusting of white paint to kind of dull that down just a smidge. I'm going to do the exact same technique to apply this spider because it came from the same garland. So I'm taking tumbling tower blocks and about a gallon of hot glue to attach him. And in the end, this was again extremely simple. The only thing that really took any time was to remove the tinsel and waiting for the wax to dry. That was it. I did add a couple spider stickers to this Target gumball machine, and then this came from the Dollar Tree, and all I did was paint it just black. Now, I didn't think I wanted to bore you guys. You've already sat through some long videos of mine, and I didn't want to take up too much of your time, so I just kind of gave you a quick overview of those last two decor pieces. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, cannot thank you guys enough for clicking on my video, spending this time with me, watching what I've come up with, and I am truly hoping that some of this can inspire you in some way to make your own fun holiday creations with a little spider twist to them and keep it creepy. And I'm sure you guessed it, the emoji that I would love to see down in the comments is, a spider. So if you can't put a spider, you can always just write the word spider. I love it. And again, you guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do like this content, please consider subscribing. But if you enjoyed the video itself, please give it a big thumbs up. It really does help my channel grow here on YouTube. I cannot thank you enough. And please sit back, relax, and have some relaxing thoughts from heart support and reach out. And if you or a loved one has any troubles, if you're concerned about anybody, it's anonymous and it's free, and you can always reach out to me. My email is in my description box below. I am more than happy to help.